Before we begin, let me ask you something quietly. When was the last time you felt completely in control of yourself? Not your schedule, not your income, not your surroundings. Yourself, your reactions, your attention, your inner state. If you were honest, it may have been a long time. Modern life moves fast, but clarity moves slowly. And in that gap, something dangerous happens. We begin to confuse motion with progress, noise with meaning, activity with purpose. The Stoics saw this pattern 2,000 years ago. They lived in a world of political chaos, social pressure, sudden loss, public judgment, and constant uncertainty. And yet, they developed a philosophy not to escape life, but to endure it with dignity. Stoicism was never about becoming emotionless. It was about becoming unshakable. If you stay with this reflection, not casually but seriously, you may notice something unsettling. Many of the things draining your energy right now were never yours to carry in the first place. The Stoics built their entire system around one ruthless distinction: what is up to you and what is not. Epictetus called this the foundation of all freedom. If something is within your control, it deserves your full effort. If it is not, it deserves none of your anxiety. There is no middle ground. Most suffering, he argued, comes from violating this rule, from pouring emotional energy into things we cannot command. Other people's opinions, the past, the future, outcomes, recognition. The modern mind rebels against this idea. We are taught that worrying means caring, that anxiety is responsibility, that control comes from force. The Stoics said the opposite. Control comes from precision. So the first rule is not motivational, it is surgical. If it is up to you, give it everything. If it is not, let it go completely. This rule alone, if practiced honestly, would reduce most mental distress by half. The second rule follows immediately. You do not control what happens. You control how you respond. Marcus Aurelius wrote this to himself as the most powerful man in the world, an emperor with legions, wealth, and authority, and still he reminded himself daily that events are indifferent. What matters is the response. This is where most people surrender their agency without realizing it. They react. They let events dictate their emotional state. They let other people pull invisible strings. The Stoic refuses this surrender. Between stimulus and response, there is a pause. And inside that pause lives freedom. This is not theory. It is practice. Something goes wrong. Someone disappoints you. Plans collapse. The untrained mind asks, "Why is this happening to me?" The Stoic asks, "What does this require of me?" That question alone transforms chaos into direction. Next comes a question Marcus Aurelius returned to obsessively. Is this essential? Not important, not urgent. Essential. Most of what fills our days is neither. The Stoics believed that clarity increases when excess is removed. When you eliminate the non-essential, you gain two benefits. You waste less energy, and you do the essential things far better. Modern life celebrates busyness. Stoicism exposes it. Being busy is often a form of avoidance of stillness, avoidance of responsibility, avoidance of choosing what truly matters. Ask yourself honestly, does this deserve my time? Does this deserve my attention? Does this deserve my life? Because every moment you give something is a moment you do not get back. This leads directly to one of the most uncomfortable Stoic practices, meditating on mortality. Not morbidly, not dramatically, clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Seneca went further. He said that death is not something waiting in the future. It is something happening continuously. Every moment that passes is gone forever. This awareness does not shrink life. It sharpens it. When time is treated as infinite, it is wasted. When it is recognized as finite, it becomes sacred. Stoicism teaches you to value time more than money, reputation, or comfort, because time is the only resource that never renews. You can earn more money. You can rebuild status. You cannot reclaim a single wasted hour. This is why the Stoics were obsessed with habits. You are not the product of your intentions. You are the product of what you do repeatedly. Epictetus said that if you want to be beautiful, make beautiful choices. If you want to be excellent, make excellent choices, not once, habitually. Character is not formed in moments of inspiration. It is formed in routine, which leads to a difficult but liberating rule. You do not have to have an opinion about everything. Most people believe that events themselves cause distress. The Stoics said this is false. Events are neutral. Judgments create suffering. You see something online. You hear a comment. You receive news. Before you even realize it, your mind labels it as good, bad, insulting, threatening. The Stoic intervenes here. You can choose to withhold judgment. You can say, "This is simply what happened." Epictetus famously said that it is not things that disturb us, but our opinions about things. This is not denial, it is restraint, and restraint creates peace. The next rule addresses the structure of the day itself. Own the morning. Marcus Aurelius argued with himself about getting out of bed. He reminded himself that he was not born for comfort, but for action. How you begin the day sets the tone for everything that follows. Discipline early prevents regret later. The Stoics believe that a well-governed morning leads to a well-governed life. This includes reflection. Seneca practiced daily self-examination. At the end of each day, he reviewed his actions. Where did I fall short? Where did I act well? What will I do differently tomorrow? This was not self-punishment. It was self-leadership. Progress requires honesty. Another core Stoic rule addresses anxiety. Do not suffer imagined troubles. Seneca observed that people suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most fears never materialize. Most worries change nothing. Anxiety is often the mind rehearsing pain that may never arrive. The Stoic deals with reality when it comes, not before. This conserves strength, and it returns attention to the present task. Which brings us to another difficult discipline. See the good in people. Marcus Aurelius did not romanticize humanity. He listed human flaws relentlessly, and yet he instructed himself to approach others with patience. If you expect corruption, you will find it. If you look for goodness, you will often find that too. Cynicism poisons the mind that holds it. Stoicism is not naive. It is generous without illusion. Another rule follows naturally. Do not complain, not even to yourself. Complaining does nothing except rehearse powerlessness. It reinforces the belief that you are a victim of circumstances rather than a participant in them. The Stoic replaces complaint with response. What now? What next? What can be done? Even when options are limited, dignity remains. There is always something you can do. Zeno said that well-being is realized by small steps, but it is no small thing. Progress compounds. Which leads to a rule many people resist. Do not compare yourself to others. Comparison focuses attention on what you do not control. It creates either arrogance or resentment, neither of which improves character. The Stoic holds themselves to their own standards, higher than average, independent of applause. This internal metric stabilizes identity. Finally, one of the most powerful Stoic reframes: live as if you have already died and been given extra time. Seneca suggested going to bed each night as if life were complete. If you wake up, the day is a gift. This changes everything. Gratitude increases. Petty concerns fade. Presence sharpens. Life becomes something you participate in, not something you endure. If the first Stoic rules bring clarity, the next ones demand courage, because clarity, once achieved, is no longer comfortable. You begin to see where your energy leaks, where your attention is misallocated, where your habits quietly betray your values. And at that point, Stoicism stops being inspiring and starts being corrective. One of the most confronting Stoic rules is this: stop trying to be liked. Marcus Aurelius warned himself repeatedly against craving approval, not because approval is evil, but because dependence on it erodes independence of judgment. The moment you require validation, you surrender authority. You begin to tailor truth. You soften principles. You hesitate where clarity demands firmness. The Stoic understands that respect is a byproduct of character, not a goal to be chased. You do what is right. You accept how it is received. This rule alone liberates enormous mental energy. Next comes a rule about emotional discipline. Feel deeply, but do not be ruled by emotion. Stoicism has been mischaracterized as emotional suppression. The Stoics rejected this entirely. They felt grief. They felt joy. They felt attachment. What they refused was emotional tyranny. Epictetus taught that emotions arise naturally, but assent is optional. You feel anger. That is human. You act cruelly. That is a choice. This distinction is the foundation of emotional mastery. It allows you to experience life fully without surrendering your character to impulse. Another Stoic rule follows naturally. Do not dramatize. Modern culture rewards exaggeration. Everything is framed as urgent, catastrophic, unprecedented. The Stoics saw dramatization as a distortion of reality. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to strip events down to their bare facts. What actually happened? Without narrative, without interpretation. When you remove exaggeration, problems shrink to manageable size. You deal with reality, not with stories. The next rule addresses suffering. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. This is not denial, it is precision. Pain happens when the body is injured or circumstances are harsh. Suffering happens when the mind adds resistance, resentment, and story. Seneca wrote that misfortune weighs most heavily on those who believe it should not exist. The Stoic accepts pain without self-pity. This preserves strength. Another rule speaks directly to modern distraction. Guard your attention as if your life depends on it, because it does. Attention determines perception. Perception determines decisions. Decisions determine destiny. The Stoics treated attention as sacred. What you allow into your mind becomes part of your character. Endless noise weakens judgment. The Stoic chooses silence deliberately, not withdrawal, selectivity. Next comes a rule about simplicity. Want less. Not out of deprivation, out of freedom. Seneca warned that increasing desire increases vulnerability. The more you need, the more life can take from you. Simplicity strengthens resilience. When you need little, you fear little. This rule is profoundly countercultural and deeply stabilizing. Another Stoic discipline concerns reputation. Accept being misunderstood. If you act with integrity, misunderstanding is inevitable. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that he could be criticized for acting justly and praised for acting wrongly. The Stoic chooses principle over perception, peace over applause. This does not mean isolation. It means independence. Next comes a rule about adversity. Treat obstacles as training. Epictetus compared life to a gymnasium. Resistance builds strength. Ease breeds fragility. The Stoic does not ask why difficulty exists. They ask how to use it. Every obstacle becomes instruction. This reframing transforms hardship into development. Another rule addresses impatience. Do not rush what must mature. The Stoics understood process. They knew that meaningful change unfolds gradually. Marcus Aurelius warned against demanding immediate results from deep work. Impatience corrupts effort. The Stoic commits and allows time to do its work. Next comes a rule about fairness. Judge yourself by your standards, not others by yours. Hypocrisy corrodes self-respect. The Stoic applies the same measure inward and outward. This creates moral symmetry. Another Stoic rule confronts entitlement. Nothing you have is permanently yours. Health, relationships, status, life itself. Everything is on loan. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this daily, not to diminish gratitude, but to refine it. You appreciate without clinging. This posture reduces fear. Next comes a rule about courage. Say what must be said, when it must be said. Silence is sometimes wisdom, but silence born of fear erodes integrity. The Stoic speaks when conscience demands, calmly, without hostility. Truth does not require aggression. Another rule concerns forgiveness. Forgive quickly, not because others deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Resentment poisons the one who holds it. The Stoic releases grudges not as generosity, but as hygiene. Another rule addresses ambition. Work hard, but do not worship work. The Stoics valued effort, not exhaustion. Burnout is not virtue. Balance preserves longevity. Next comes a rule about learning. Remain teachable. Marcus Aurelius warned himself against intellectual arrogance. Certainty closes the mind. Humility keeps it alive. Another Stoic rule concerns leadership. Lead yourself before attempting to lead others. Authority without self-mastery is hollow. The Stoic governs inward first. Finally, a rule that ties many together. Live in a way that would still make sense if no one noticed, because eventually no one will. What remains is character. At a certain point, Stoic rules stop feeling like guidance. They begin to feel like a mirror, not because they judge you, but because they remove your excuses. This is where Stoicism becomes uncomfortable for the modern mind, because it does not negotiate with weakness. It does not reward intention over action. It does not confuse self-expression with self-mastery. The Stoics were deeply concerned with one question above all others. What kind of person is this shaping me into? They understood that life is not decided by dramatic moments alone. It is decided by repetition, by what you tolerate, by what you excuse, by what you practice without noticing. Which brings us to a difficult Stoic rule. Do not lie to yourself. Seneca warned that self-deception is the most dangerous form of dishonesty, because it blocks correction. Most people know exactly where they are compromised. They simply avoid naming it. The Stoic refuses this avoidance. Where am I rationalizing instead of acting? Where am I explaining instead of correcting? Where am I protecting comfort at the expense of character? Truth in Stoicism is not a concept, it is a discipline. The next rule addresses time again, but from a sharper angle. Do not live as if time were abundant. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that you could leave life at any moment. This was not meant to produce fear. It was meant to produce focus. When time is treated as unlimited, days dissolve into distraction. When time is treated as finite, priorities become unmistakable. This rule strips away procrastination. What would you do today if you knew it mattered? The Stoics believed that urgency, rightly understood, is not stress. It is respect for reality. Another rule confronts modern obsession with identity. Do not cling to labels. Job titles change. Social roles dissolve. Public perception shifts without warning. Epictetus warned that attaching identity to externals makes the self fragile. The Stoic builds identity on character. I am someone who acts justly. I am someone who keeps their word. I am someone who governs their reactions. These identities cannot be taken. Next comes a rule about adversity. Do not ask for an easier life. Ask for a stronger mind. This was not bravado. It was realism. The Stoics understood that difficulty is unavoidable. Strength, however, is optional. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the obstacle is the way, not because obstacles are desirable, but because they are unavoidable. What you resist trains you. What you endure refines you. The next rule addresses emotional resilience. Expect people to be imperfect. This alone would eliminate enormous frustration. The Stoics had no illusions about human behavior. People will be selfish. People will disappoint. People will act from ignorance. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should begin each day prepared to meet interference, ingratitude, and arrogance, not with bitterness, but with understanding. Expectation determines reaction. When you expect perfection, you are constantly outraged. When you expect imperfection, you remain composed. Another Stoic rule confronts indulgence. Do not seek comfort as a default. Comfort, when pursued constantly, weakens resolve. Seneca warned that luxury softens the mind. The Stoic does not reject comfort entirely. They refuse to depend on it. Occasional discomfort strengthens resilience. Cold sharpens awareness. Effort builds endurance. Restraint preserves freedom. Next comes a rule about responsibility. Take ownership of your inner state. No one can force you to judge something as unbearable. No one can compel resentment. The Stoic accepts full responsibility for interpretation. This is demanding, and it is liberating. Blame dissolves. Victimhood disappears. Agency returns. Another rule addresses envy. Do not resent the success of others. Envy assumes scarcity. The Stoics rejected this assumption. Another person's success does not diminish your capacity for virtue. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that excellence is not a competition. Character is not a ranking. This frees you from comparison. Next comes a rule about speech. Speak with precision or not at all. Words shape thought. Excessive speech dilutes clarity. The Stoics valued measured language, not silence for its own sake, but speech aligned with purpose. This discipline preserves credibility. Another Stoic rule concerns patience. Allow people to reveal themselves over time. Immediate judgment is often inaccurate. Time exposes character. The Stoic observes before concluding. Next comes a rule about anger. Anger promises strength, but delivers blindness. Seneca devoted an entire treatise to anger, warning that it destroys judgment faster than any other emotion. The Stoic delays reaction. Anger weakens when denied immediacy. Another rule addresses ambition again. Pursue excellence quietly. Do not announce progress. Let results speak. The Stoics distrusted performative virtue. They valued substance over appearance. Another rule concerns loss. Practice letting go before you are forced to. This does not diminish love. It prepares the mind. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that all attachments are temporary. This awareness reduces shock when loss arrives. Next comes a rule about legacy. Do not aim to be remembered. Aim to be worthy. Reputation fades. Character echoes. Another Stoic discipline addresses learning. Revisit foundational truths often. The Stoics repeated the same ideas relentlessly, not because they lacked originality, but because repetition strengthens integration. Finally, one of the most sobering Stoic rules: live in a way that requires no apology, not perfection, integrity, so that if your actions were examined without explanation, they would still make sense. This rule demands coherence between what you believe and what you permit, between what you say and what you do, between the person you admire and the person you are becoming. Stoicism does not promise comfort. It promises alignment, and alignment is rare. At some point, Stoic rules stop sounding like advice. They begin to sound like standards, not imposed from the outside, chosen from within. This is where Stoicism reveals its true purpose, not to make life easier, not to remove pain, not to guarantee success, but to make a person solid. Solid enough to endure difficulty without bitterness, solid enough to succeed without corruption, solid enough to face loss without collapse. The Stoic philosophers were not optimists. They were realists with discipline. They understood that life is unstable by design, that comfort is temporary, that security is an illusion borrowed from luck. And so they focused on the only thing that could not be taken: character. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you may lose your body, your reputation, your position, but you do not have to lose your moral purpose unless you abandon it yourself. This idea runs beneath every Stoic rule. If you control your judgments, no one controls you. If you govern your impulses, no one owns you. If you align your actions with principle, no circumstance can degrade you. This is not abstraction. It is practical sovereignty. Stoicism does not demand withdrawal from life. It demands engagement without enslavement. To work hard without worshiping work. To love deeply without clinging. To strive without desperation. The Stoic remains involved, but not entangled. This posture produces a rare kind of calm, not the calm of comfort, the calm of readiness. You are not surprised by difficulty. You are not offended by inconvenience. You are not destabilized by uncertainty, because you expected none of life's guarantees. Seneca warned that the person who expects fairness from the world will suffer more than the person who expects nothing but the chance to act well. Expectation is the root of resentment. Stoicism removes expectation and replaces it with responsibility. Responsibility for your conduct. Responsibility for your interpretation. Responsibility for your effort. Nothing more, nothing less. This is why Stoic rules feel demanding. They remove your excuses. They deny you the comfort of blame. They refuse to indulge self-pity. They ask you to stand upright, even when no one is watching. And yet, paradoxically, they are deeply humane. They allow for grief. They allow for fatigue. They allow for error. What they do not allow is unconsciousness. To live without reflection, to act without intention, to drift without direction. The Stoics believed that most people do not fail because they lack intelligence or opportunity. They fail because they lack internal order. Their desires contradict their values. Their habits undermine their goals. Their reactions sabotage their peace. Stoicism restores order. It simplifies life by clarifying what matters. What matters is not how much you accumulate, not how admired you are, not how comfortable you become. What matters is whether you act with dignity when tested. And you will be tested. Not once, not dramatically, daily, in small moments, when you are tired, when you are provoked, when no one would know. This is where character is revealed. Marcus Aurelius wrote that, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one." Stoicism is impatient with theory divorced from action. It demands embodiment. It asks, how do you speak when you could wound? How do you act when you could cheat? How do you respond when you could complain? These moments do not trend online. They do not earn applause. But they accumulate, and accumulation becomes identity. Identity becomes reputation. Reputation becomes legacy. The Stoics did not seek legacy, but they understood it was inevitable. How you live leaves a trace on people, on systems, on culture. You influence others not through instruction, but through example, through restraint when chaos would be contagious, through fairness when advantage would be tempting, through steadiness when panic would be easier. In a world addicted to reaction, composure becomes authority. In a culture of excess, restraint becomes power. In an age of noise, clarity becomes leadership. Stoicism does not promise happiness. It promises coherence. And coherence produces something deeper than happiness: self-respect. To know that your life, while imperfect, is not accidental, that your values are not decorative, that your actions are not arbitrary, that your effort is not wasted. This is the quiet satisfaction the Stoics pursued, not pleasure, not escape, alignment. Alignment between what you know and what you do, between what you admire and what you practice, between the person you respect and the person you are becoming. This alignment does not arrive once. It must be renewed daily. That is why Stoicism is not a philosophy you finish. It is a discipline you return to again and again, when distracted, when discouraged, when tempted to abandon your standards. The Stoic rules are not there to judge you. They are there to reorient you, to bring you back to center, to remind you that even when circumstances are chaotic, you are not required to be. You always retain one power, the power to choose your response, and that power, when exercised consistently, shapes everything else. If you have stayed with this reflection until now, it says something important about you. You are not looking for shortcuts. You are not chasing slogans. You are interested in substance. If that is the case, you may choose to remain in this conversation, not passively, not habitually, deliberately. You may subscribe, not as an act of loyalty, but as a way to continue engaging with ideas that demand more than entertainment. You may share this with one person whose judgment you trust, not to convince, but to think together. And if you leave a thoughtful comment, you are not merely responding. You are acknowledging the work, the study, the discipline, the respect for ideas that went into creating this. That exchange matters. It keeps serious thought alive in a world that rarely rewards it. Whatever you decide, remember this: you do not need to dominate the world. You need only govern yourself within it. That task is difficult, and it is enough.